Mr. Rooney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, I wanted to ask you a line of questioning, if I could, based on a letter that was written to your office from our chairman, Mr. Wolf, with regard to Major Nidal Hassan and the Fort Hood shootings. It was dated March 15, 2013. They have not received a response as of yet, I believe. So I wanted to delve into this a little bit if I could. Specifically, I want to raise a line from the letter that was from a former colleague of ours, Mr. McHugh, who is now the Secretary of the Army. And he was interviewed in an ABC Nightline report saying, quote, awarding Purple Hearts could adversely affect the trial of Major Hassan. To award a Purple Heart, it has to be done by a foreign terrorist element, said McHugh. So to declare a soldier a foreign terrorist, we are told, I'm not an attorney and I don't run the Justice Department, but we were told that would have a profound effect on the ability to conduct the trial. So this is sort of the basis of where I want to go with my line of questionings. And the issues revolved around workplace violence versus acts of terror, whether or not victims would receive a Purple Heart or not, and why, and how that might taint the trial of Mr. Hassan. And then, of course, your role in this, because he specifically implies, I believe, in his quote, that the Justice Department here has some role, all in the overview of your budget requests and how we move forward. I just want to preface by saying that I served at Fort Hood. My son was born at Fort Hood on 9/6/2001, 5 days before 9/11. And I'm very familiar with the up-tempo nature of that post. We have 2 divisions there, along with 3 corps. It can be a highly stressful environment. And I was a young captain there a few years back, so for me, it's somewhat personal. I was also a judge advocate there. I prosecuted cases in the building that Major Hassan is being prosecuted in. I know the prosecutor. I knew the former defense attorney very well. So I just want to try to get to, if we can, a little bit some clarity on this issue, which I think the victims there certainly deserve. So my first question is, and if you could keep these answers as much as possible to yes or no so I can get through as many as possible. Did DOD officials consult you or members of your department regarding the decision to designate Hassan's attack on military and civilian personnel at Fort Hood as an act of workplace violence?
Well, I'm going to say this is an answer that is not yes or no, but might help with regard to the line of questioning. I'm just not familiar with what interaction we've had with the Department of Defense with regard to this issue. I don't know.
If the witness would yield, this is a gentleman that's being prosecuted by DOD, right? By the Department of Defense, not by the Department of Justice. And John McHugh, just so the record can be clear, is a former Republican member of the House who's serving in his 2nd term now in the Obama administration. And this is a military procedure in terms of the trial of this gentleman. And I just want to make sure the record is clear, even though, I mean, the gentleman who's a great member and has every right to question the Attorney General on it, but it is not something that the Department of Justice is handling.
Well, and I appreciate that. The only reason I bring it up is because Mr. McHugh himself said in this interview that I'm not an attorney and I don't run the Justice Department, but we're told that the Purple Heart Award would have a profound effect on the ability to conduct a fair trial. So the answer by the Secretary of the Army implies that the Justice Department has some involvement here, and that's what I'm asking you. So if your answer to that is no, then we certainly can move on.
As far as I know, the decision as to award Purple Hearts was not influenced in any way by anything the Justice Department said, but I will we'll look at that, and to the extent that we've had some interaction with the Defense Department, relay that to you. But I think that what Congressman Fatah has said is correct. This is a military prosecution. It does not involve the Justice Department. Clearly, we're not involved in making Purple Heart determinations. But if we've had some interaction with them, I'll share that.
Okay.
I'm just not aware of it.
If the gentleman would yield, though, Mr. Rooney's accurate, though, and I have the letter, I just pulled it out. Mr. McHugh said, I'm not an attorney, I don't run the Justice Department. And there is an inference, I think Mr. Rooney's right, that before they did anything, they went to the Justice Department, and quite frankly, the administration has treated these people very, very poorly. I mean, some are in the audience here today, very, very poorly. So the inference is, unless McHugh misspoke, that they did call justice before they did anything. I yield back to the gentleman.
Are you aware, Mr. Attorney General, what person in the administration made the call to deem that a workplace violence incident, or?
No.
No.
I'm not aware. No.
Okay, if I could, I just want to continue on. If all these questions are going to be no, then I certainly understand. But I want to continue on with the line of questioning. Can you recall any case in your role as the Attorney General where a case was tried as a workplace violence in which the perpetrator had a prior FBI documented connections to an Al-Qaeda leader like Anwar al-Awlaki, and then went on to murder 13 people? Is that something that you've ever seen before as deemed workplace violence case?
I'm not familiar with a fact situation like that, no.
Do you believe that, I assume that you agree that Mr. Anwar al-Awlaki is in fact a terrorist, since we killed him in Yemen.
That he was a terrorist.
Right, correct. So that the relationship between al-Awlaki and Mr. Hassan is well documented. We have the Webster Commission report, which, are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. Which went into excruciating detail about the relationship and what we knew or what we didn't know, or what we should have known and what we neglected to act on. Immediately following the Fort Hood attack on members of our military, was any terrorism investigative or prosecutorial authority sought from the department's National Security Division? In other words, did anybody get with you to for guidance or to see if you were going to be prosecuting this case?
I don't know. We'll have to look into it. I just don't know the answer to that question.
So you don't know if it was approved or denied?
I don't know.
Okay. And I don't know. Again, if you're not aware of a lot of this stuff, then you know what I'm about to ask is one of the things that sort of confused me when I was preparing my line of questioning for today, and the inference by Mr. McHugh that the Justice Department had some role and that we were worried about tainting the trial, which I get. Remembering a comment that you had made in the past about KSM and being brought here, that I don't know if you actually used the term slam dunk, but it was along those lines that we have every confidence that his conviction will be a foregone conclusion. And I thought that was a little bit interesting because he had yet to go through trial, and that there could be a taint issue there. So to worry about there being a taint issue with the Hassan case, and labeling it workplace violence versus an act of terror, I couldn't really jive those two. But if you're saying to our committee that you are not aware of the Mr. McHugh saying that there was an interaction between DOD and you on this case, then I guess that's moot.
Yeah, I'm just not aware about that. Let me just also say that with regard to KSM, I never said what it is you said or used a word to that effect.
Somebody did. I just remember hearing that and thinking it was kind of interesting that we were basically patting ourselves on the back that the New York District Court was going to have a conviction no matter what, and this guy was going down, and we hadn't even gone there yet. But That's completely irrelevant to what I'm trying to get at here. Could you explain to me what your department's protocol is now if a member of our military was to send multiple emails to an individual on the terror watch list attempting to financially support a known terrorist? So if we were going through this again now, what is your protocol?
Well, I mean, if anybody was sending material or doing things that would support a designated terrorist organization, that would potentially violate the material support statute. A case could be brought.
Even if it's somebody in the military?
Well, I was going to say, now, the interaction between the Justice Department and the Defense Department in that regard.
Calling Nidal Hasan a terrorist before the trial would in fact taint the trial and make the panel in the court-martial see him adversely and to go against our judicial principles. So therefore, we would not call it an act of terror. We would not entertain giving these guys Purple Hearts because we're worried about tainting that trial. Do you have an opinion if after the trial Nidal Hasan is found guilty of these murders and attempted murders? After he's found guilty, do you have an opinion of whether or not we can then label it as an act of terror so that Purple Hearts can be awarded? Do you have an opinion about that?
Well, first, let me just say that with regard to the people who you recognize, I want to thank them for their service, and they have my sympathy for the losses that they've had to endure. With regard to the question that you've put to me, this is something that I think is more properly in the on the side of the Defense Department. History obviously will judge him after the trial. I don't know. It depends on, I guess, on how the trial turns out. But with regard to the designation, I think we're talking about something that is a technicality, something very technical, and it has to do with how the military would make that assessment as opposed to me as Attorney General on the civilian side.
Okay. I would appreciate, even if you can't answer the questions that the chairman posed to you in this letter, if you could respond in like fashion as you have to the questions that I propose. I would just appreciate the answers to those questions as best as you can answer them. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Please. Our government has treated them poorly. And what I'm going to ask you, and I appreciate, and this is another thing, Mr. Attorney General, why should I write you a letter? You should have known this. You're briefing. They're passing you notes left and right on every issue. You would have thought somebody would have told you that somebody who serves in Congress sent you a letter. You've had this letter for a month and a half. And it's an issue of such importance for men and women who have served the country. And so maybe justice wasn't well. What I'm going to ask you here, would you send one of your people up next week to sit down with Mr. Rooney and tell him we weren't involved, there was no involvement, or on the other hand, we were involved in it because you don't seem to know the answer. Would you send somebody up and commit to send and sit down with Mr. Rooney next week?
Well, we'll certainly look at the letter and we will respond to it as quickly as...
Well, but I don't think, but we're never getting responses. Once you get out of here, you're gone. I mean, we may never see you again. There will be no response. But you never respond to the letter. I'm saying, would you commit to Mr. Rooney to send someone up? And I see you whispering back there, back and forth. Will you send someone up to meet with Mr. Rooney next week? Yes or no?
What I said was that we will...
Will you send someone up next week to meet with Mr. Rooney?
I want to look at... I don't know. I need to know better, understand...
You'll have enough time. Mr. Rooney, we're in through next Friday. Can you send someone up to meet with Mr. Rooney to talk to him?
You say there's enough time. I don't know that to be the case. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the nature of this issue is. We'll have to deal with, whether we're going to have to talk to the...
Well,
so we will do the best we can to answer the questions.
Sure, I yield to the gentleman.
If I say to someone, well, I'm not a member of the Republican Party, but however, that does not mean then you go to the Republican Party and say, well, what do you have to do with this? When John McHugh says, well, I don't know what justice would think, it doesn't mean that the Department of Justice had in.
I agree.
So we can't go run off a cliff here on an inference. Let's just start there. Now you have the commander-in-chief who's in a military chain of command, and you got a military trial going on. The gentleman, Mr. Rooney, was a JAG officer. He knows that the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, cannot pre-disclose a view on the trial. That is to say it was a terrorist act. While you have a military tribunal going on, that would be improper. You have a trial going on having to do with this man. I think DOD is completely wrong. It may have taken place at a workplace, but obviously this gentleman was involved in a terrorist act. But this is a military trial. We're talking about the civilian Department of Justice. We're taking the
the questions, but you know, it's interesting. You want us to reprogram. We reprogram the money for you. In fact, as I people tell me, well, why are you going to reprogram that money for the Attorney General when he did what he did? I said, well, I'm going to do it because I want to be helpful to the Bureau of Prisons. I want to do what's right. I don't want to be like some other people. Now you're going to be coming back and asking for others, and I'll try to help you there because I don't want to see you took money from the FBI that is now doing very critical work to give to the Bureau of Prison. Now other agencies, and I'll cooperate there. But frankly, I'm not going to pay any attention to you because your positions with regard to these budget, if you can't answer the questions, you come up here. You were initially going to stay for the whole time, and you're not going to answer the question. Then we're not going to pay any attention to it. Here in the jury.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to stay, I'll stay. I will stay. If they're well, you know what? That meeting will just have to wait. If you want to ask some more questions, let's go.
Sure, then we'll go through the whole group then. They told me, Mike, what time did they say he had to leave?
And that's right. It is an important meeting, but making a determination. If you want me to stay, I'll stay.
Because they told me it dealt with the Boston issue. Is that correct?
It does.
That's an important issue, and I wouldn't want you to miss it. The hearing is adjourned. I think you ought to go there.
Well, I would like to say this, and that is that you said some things that I think are a little unfair with regard to the Civil Rights Division, and a lot of what the Inspector General found in the Civil Rights Division preceded my time as Attorney General. We have taken steps to try to deal with the issues that were identified there. And with regard to the whole question of prison industries, I have done as much as I could. I've been really supportive of that. I've tried to work with you in that regard. That's consistent with the approach that I've taken, that we need to do something with people who are in our prisons. We can't just warehouse them. We have to try to give them skills. I'm proud of what we've done across the board with the Justice Department in the last 4.5 years. I'm proud of what I've done as Attorney General. The department that we have now is fundamentally different from the department that I found when I got there. We don't hire people on the basis of political orientation. We don't do things as was done in the previous administration. We don't write memos that say that torture is appropriate when dealing with interrogation techniques. I am very proud of my time as Attorney General, and I'm proud of the men and women who have served under me.
It took you years to do the prison rape. The Bureau of Prisons, we have asked them to bring in programs with regard to work. There's been no effort. And I'm going to end with this. The Inspector General reported on a voting section of the Civil Rights Division documented inappropriate and hostile harassment and other unprofessional behavior, including partisan and personal attacks. The Inspector General, your Inspector General, said this, quote, reflects a disappointing lack of professionalism over an extended period of time during 2 administrations